Let's talk abortion. Since 2010, there have been 338 new state laws to limit access to abortions. Ever since 1973's Roe v. Wade legalized it, anti-choice activists and legislators have been picking away at abortion rights, bit by bit. And this is how they're doing it. The Hyde Amendment was passed 3 years after Roe v. Wade and is named after this guy. It bans federal funding for abortion care in almost all cases. And it's only after pro-choice protests that the amendment included an exception in cases of rape, incest, or preserving the life of the mother. Unsurprisingly, the Hyde Amendment hits poor women and women of color the hardest. The Helms Amendment does the same thing for foreign assistance funds, blocking women in some of the poorest countries from accessing safe reproductive health care, while the global gag rule bans NGOs receiving federal funds from even mentioning abortion as a viable option. Anti-choicers love them some trap laws, or the targeted regulation of abortion providers. These are arbitrary regulations that target abortion clinics with the purpose of closing them down, like in these states, which have specific and completely arbitrary requirements on clinics' room size and corridor width. These are just a couple of many impossible standards trap laws impose. Even though anti-choicers say these guidelines are for women's safety,
we are protecting women's health.
This is really about the issue of women's health.
We're protecting women's health and safety.
We all know that's a load of bull. Trap laws shutter clinics and force women into desperate situations. And they don't even reduce the number of abortions. They just force women towards options that are unsafe. And women have become even more desperate as more and more Planned Parenthood and women's health clinics are shuttered across states. Texas cut 2/3 of its family planning budget, forcing 82 health clinics to close across the state. And Texas isn't alone. These states are down to about one abortion clinic each, because they've also been passing similar laws. A recent study found that some women in the U.S. have to travel up to 330 miles to access abortion services, increasing the time between a woman's decision to get an abortion and actually getting one. Some women don't have the freedom to take hours or days off of their jobs or family lives, but in addition to that, they're forced to undergo mandatory counseling, where they're evaluated on whether or not they can make an informed decision to have an abortion. But in reality, these counseling sessions are filled with false information and scare tactics to discourage women from getting an abortion at all. And then, mandatory counseling is followed by a mandatory waiting period before the actual procedure. Louisiana, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Utah now require 72-hour waiting times between counseling and the procedure, and many other states require a 24-hour waiting period. Things get even harder for minors who, in some states, are required to get parental consent. Otherwise, they would need to get a judge to grant them a waiver, part of a judicial bypass clause that exists in 36 states. The shame game. It's one of the anti-choice movement's all-time favorites. For example, states with those mandatory counseling sessions also force women to have ultrasounds and see the fetus before the procedure. But don't worry, ladies. Pennsylvania's former governor, Tom Corbett, said,
"Because you just have to close your eyes."
Still, after looking at these ultrasounds, a 2014 study found that 98% of women still terminated the pregnancy. Anti-choicers are fond of the 20-week abortion ban, which prohibits the procedure after that cutoff, ignoring that women who seek the procedure after 20 weeks are often doing so for personal medical reasons. There's also attempts to ban abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected. This usually happens around 6 weeks before most women even realize they're pregnant. And then there have been attempts to ban methods like dilation and evacuation, the most commonly used technique in second trimester abortions. With Trump in office and a Republican-controlled Congress, the anti-choice movement has more political power to push these strategies across the country. And they were already making headway before 45 took over. Look, there's a lot of forces trying to take women's reproductive rights backwards, but there's also a lot we can do to keep moving them forward. Let's show these old anti-choice lawmakers that women actually are people capable of kicking them out of office.